now we'll be commencing with our panel discussion on revitalizing organization culture and capabilities for a BANI world. I'd just like to take a moment to invite our speakers up on stage. First up, we have Dr. Aquil Busrai, CEO of Aquil Busrai Consulting. Sir, can we have you on stage, please? Followed by S.Y. Siddiqui, who was a former chief mentor and board member at Maruti Suzuki India Limited. Please welcome now Mr. Rajan Dutta, founder and managing director of RFG Lifestyle Private Limited. Mr. K.S. Bakshi, group head of HR and InterGlobe Enterprises Private Limited. And finally, Dr. Victor Gambhir, Vice Chancellor, JECRC University, Jaipur. Please give a round of applause for our panelists today.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Anant. I'm doing my master's from New Delhi Institute of Management, and I'm going to introduce our speakers now. Dr. Aquil Bansari, CEO of Aquil Busrai Consulting, a distinguished HR leader and industry veteran. As our esteemed speaker, Dr. Busrai, a gold medalist from XLRI with an MBA and a postgraduate degree in law, bringing over 5 decades of experience in human resources. S.Y. Siddiqui, former chief mentor and board member at Maruti Suzuki India Limited. Shri Siddiqui offers a wealth of expertise in HR and corporate strategy. His impactful career at Maruti Suzuki includes transformative contributions to HR, finance, IT, and legal functions, along with driving innovations and aligning HR strategies with business goals.
Mr. Rajan Dutta, who is the founder and managing director of RFG Lifestyle Private Limited. Shri Dutta is renowned for his innovative approach to lifestyle products and brands. At RFG Lifestyle, Shri Dutta has driven the company's growth through a focus on quality and innovation. His leadership has been key in establishing RFG Lifestyle as a conglomerate in the lifestyle sector. Next up, Mr. K.S. Bakshi. Mr. Bakshi is the group head of HR at InterGlobe Enterprise Private Limited. Shri Bakshi brings extensive expertise from his leading Indian conglomerate with interests in aviation, hospitality, and travel. His insights into human resource management and strategies are expected to be highly valuable.
Dr. Victor Gambhir, president of JECRC University, Jaipur, has a distinguished career spanning over 40 years, including 4 years in industry and 36 years in education. He holds advanced degrees in mechanical engineering from Thapar Institute of Engineering and Technology and Punjab Engineering College, and a PhD in quality in engineering education.
We are so lucky to have you here. Thank you for giving us your valuable time. Let's begin with the panel discussion for the day. Our first speaker is Mr. Aquil Busrai.
Thank you. I need the mic. Good afternoon. Thank you, Top Ranker, for inviting us. It's a privilege to be among so many professionals. And Dr. Gambhir, once more, congratulations for winning the award, sir. So we have total 90 minutes amongst 5 of us. The way we have thought we'll cover our session is to first share our individual thoughts, 2 main thoughts on the topic, for what, maximum 7 minutes. And then we'll interact with each other to understand different perspective of the same topic. We will ask questions, we'll take questions from the audience in between. So there's no end of the session question and there'll be no summary. So it'll be an interaction. So feel free to raise your hand if you feel there's something very pertinent you want to share. Well, when I saw the topic first, It actually is amusing that how easily all of us get carried away with some buzzwords or catchphrase. For last 10, 15 years, we were flooded with everything called VUCA. Huh? So every second conference was on VUCA world and what is volatile, what is uncertain, and everybody talked about VUCA. Suddenly, 2 years back, the word BANI came on the scene. So now we all talk about BANI. Brittle. Frankly, I have not understood what an organization is so brittle. But everybody talks about it, and those who don't talk about it feel that we are left out. And this is the sad part, because when we talk of culture, and our topic is on revitalizing culture, my view is that BANI, VUCA are all indications of changes happening in environment and business environment. That does not mean that the culture will change. Culture is a DNA of the organization. Something very robust, something very stable, and also it indicates the DNA of the organization for a long term. It doesn't change with business cycle. And if it doesn't change with business cycle, then you have to be very careful that we do not treat changes in environment as a trigger point for changing culture. And what I would like to cover is exactly that. And because it's a robust and steady, it does not change with season. It remains what it is. It may tweak, it may change its priority in terms of organization priority, but the culture itself remains solid. And that's what my colleagues and I will try to touch upon, how we have seen culture, how we have handled culture, and how we have seen change. So I'll share two of my thoughts first, that the way the environment is changing in terms of technology, product cycle, innovation, one has to adopt very simple approach of adaptability and resilience. And that's going to be the crucial part, that every organization will have to learn to make sure that they are adaptable. They're not rigid, they're not stereotyped into one way of doing things or no way. And that resilience to see the ups and downs. Many of us saw Baiju. Yet, credit to the Baiju's founder, they are still showing resilience. And that's what the binding factor and the strong culture that is built up in any organization. And most important thing is that an organization must learn to promote a culture of continuous learning. Professional obsolescence is going to be the biggest hurdle in coming years, because many of us who know something about a topic now will not know anything about the topic 8 months, 12 months from now. Things are changing that fast. And if there's no continuous learning culture in your organization, it will lag behind. My second thought pertains to how one has to be sensitive that the way we manage people and the organization has changed. Those of us who are with gray hair or no hair know the time when hierarchy was a culture. The pyramid, the top boss, the second top boss, the third layer, fourth layer, fifth layer, and as management trainee or first level officers, we were chota-mota guys here, there, looking up to the king. That has changed. Organizations are becoming flatter. And when they become flatter, hierarchy disappears. And that brings in one very important change that is required for all of us to bring into organization, especially as HR professionals, that bring in an atmosphere of culture of trust. Now, it cannot be switched on, or you can't teach people how to have trust, but one has to focus on that. Are we developing a culture where people can trust the organization and its leadership as well as peers? And second part, the type of profile, demographic profile that is coming into the organization, one has to learn to empower. Those days of hierarchy, authority are actually long over. And this is not easy for people who have experience. They say, but I have earned this. Now I have earned the seat, and now I should have the authority. The whole idea is to shared responsibility will come in, and the organization culture will have to ensure that the facilitating part of shared leadership is done through empowerment processes by which people do get independent chance to do take their own decision, and decentralization. Everything need not be centralized and will not be centralized. We are already seeing that happen, and that is what is right direction the organizations are moving. Now, whether it's a cultural change or it's a business requirement, is a question of finding right nuances for it. But the fact is that decentralization is happening and will continue to happen more and more. Decision will go down. It won't be coming up to be taken by one set of people. Communication will need to be paid attention to transparency. All this keeping close to the chest, gone. One has to be very transparent because the people who are the workforce will not accept closed-door policies and respect hierarchy. And if they don't respect hierarchy, it's not that I'm praising indiscipline. Sorry, that's not my approach. But the idea of transparency and open communication means there's free interaction. And that culture has to be developed. Now, whether it's a culture developed or it's a process development, these are all fine words to use. We're not playing with words here. And one more change that is likely to take bigger focus is diversity. Not only gender, but age diversity, diversity of thinking, diversity of the way you approach the subject. That is going to be, and how many of us in leadership positions are prepared to listen to diverse views will have to change. Whether we like it or not, we'll have to change. And those youngsters who have different viewpoint will have to be given the platform, and rightly so. If you don't give them, they will demand it. And if you don't give them despite demand, they will leave you. There's no if, no but about it. So in the end, when you create an organization to be more agile, it moves with the time. It's not completely disorganized, but agile as well as is responsive. How fast you respond to the changing demands within the organization, outside the organization. These two forces will have to be understood very clearly, that what needs to be changed. You cannot say, but I've done it like this and succeeded for 30 years, I will continue to do like that. That is the type of culture changes. The process and the way we behave, the way we work will have to change. And whether you call it a change in culture, it's a matter of interpretation. But at the same time, we have to remember one thing, that the culture of the organization is only one where people feel belonging, a sense of belonging. They feel a sense of pride. I spent half my career with Unilever. I was fortunate to have worked with companies like Unilever or Motorola, Shell, and IBM, where the culture was so strong that you started imbibing the culture, feeling proud and feeling part of the team almost instantaneously. But that doesn't mean those organizations will continue the way they continued 30 years ago. They have to adapt to the changing time, become more flexible, more agile, more open. And at the end of the day, when we do this, we would have created an organization which is responsive to the changing time. And that itself will have an impact on the culture. Thank you very much for your time. May I invite now Siddiqui Saab to share his views.
Dr. Aquil Busrai, Mr. Rajan, Dutta, KS, Dr. Gambhir. I see Dr. VP Singh being part of the audience here, my friend Devashish, and my dear colleague Salil. Good afternoon to all of you. There was this mention about BANI World, revitalizing organization culture and capabilities. I was here at 11:15, so I saw a different hall full of people during the inaugural session. After tea break, this BANI World happened, 50% people gone. But we still have to go on, life has to go on, so therefore this panel is there. So Dr. Aquil Busrai was saying, where are the people? I said, BANI has taken 50% of them out of this place. When we are looking at this revitalizing org culture and capabilities, I think recent example is the COVID crisis. It happened so fast, it happened suddenly, we had no knowledge, we had no capabilities. And companies like Maruti, we all had to face 40,000 people, how to take care of them, supply chain, dealers. So perhaps when we look at some such experience in the recent 3-4 years, some of the points I think Dr. Busrai has very rightly talked about, I think something similar, I think building a kind of an equity environment for revitalizing the organization culture is the need of the future with the kind of multi-generational workforce which is going to be part of companies. That is creating opportunity for all, transparency, and maybe a feeling of fairness and a kind of a firmness also. That is one. From the Japanese perspective, I think one very big learning over the years which we have had is that very high focus on communication, communication, and communication. In that spirit, repeatedly, that focus is to be there in terms of town hall meetings, in terms of direction setting, in terms of making it clear what is our culture, what exactly is the competition, what is our business, what is the performance, how challenges are going to be met. That is one big need. Communicate to people, listen to them. Listening leadership coming into play post-COVID is perhaps one of the most critical developments on the leadership space which I have seen and the culture space. If you listen to your people, listen to your stakeholders, communicate well, I think that is going to be defining sustainable success for the company. The third perspective, perhaps, again, very big link to Japan, is focus on teamwork, team synergies, and collaboration. What we see is office politics or kind of organizational conflicts, issues, interpersonal relation getting into a bit of negative taste. I think that will be completely outdated. So perhaps culture should be such where we build synergies, cross-functional teams, maybe people to come together from different diverse backgrounds. And therefore, one big development which is happening right now is very high focus in most companies, multinationals as well as Indian companies, is focus on diversity, equity and inclusion. Very big focus is coming in there. And perhaps recently, part of being a jury for HR, kind of awards ceremony, we had this D&I as one excellence category, and I could see some companies where they have done some outstanding work on diversity, equity and inclusion. And it is diversity, not only gender, which we mistakenly understand. I think it is a much bigger subject, and I was maybe finding it very interesting to learn from the presentations which various companies made part of that. So that is becoming another big factor. Maybe looking at facilitating work-life balance, I think out of question. There is nothing like work-life balance in my thinking. 44 years of my career, I could never had this work-life balance. But I think quality of work-life can be made better. So that when you go to work, you are excited. The work itself is exciting. There is a buzz. A lot of colleagues, very good relationships, positive energy. I think some companies are working in creating quality of work-life, not work-life balance. Work-life balance is impractical. I think it's theoretical. Maybe looking at resilience, and I think Aquil Bhai talked about it, post-COVID, I think one big effort in reinforcing culture of a company is to build people capabilities where they have this very high adaptability, capability to have perseverance, patience, and capability to decode a crisis, building resilience. That structured effort in most companies perhaps is creating future culture capability to handle adversity. Because when we look at the global business environment and BANI World, we are roughly looking at a turbulence normally which we experience in our flight for 5-10 minutes when you get into some air pockets. But if there is a flight 8.5 hours and all the time in turbulence, then you have to adapt and live within that turbulence itself. That is what is the global world today. So therefore, maybe building that kind of resilience is important. And preparing for change, transformation, whether it is digital, whether it is post-COVID, whether it is new normal, I think change is going to be part of life. And change is where you get into discomfort to start with. Anything which changes around us, we get into a discomfort. So maybe short-term pain for long-term gain is where perhaps we are looking at this capability to, look at this emerging skills of tomorrow. I think a lot of shift is going to happen. Learning capacity will become more important than past talent. I think Aquil bhai talked about it. So somewhere we need to prepare the culture in the company where we are able to adjust, adapt well to the emerging transformation or change. Last but not the least, and normally I talk about it in wherever kind of possibility of me sharing my thoughts, we have to develop in our culture capability to selectively delete the past. Very difficult. Because we live with our past habits rigidly, unconsciously, and therefore that becomes biggest resistance to change. हम लोग के यहाँ पे तो जो पॉलीथीन के शॉपिंग में बैग्स मिलते हैं वो भी हम संभाल के रख लेते हैं कि बच्चों के दहेज में काम आएंगे. Selectively deleting the past तो बहुत difficult है. But I think somewhere companies will have to look at this one capability. You create space for new ideas, new kind of perspective, third eye kind of perspective, if you are able to selectively delete the past. Lastly, perhaps, when we are looking at revitalizing org culture and we are looking at, bringing capabilities, I think there will be a very big role of the top leadership in enabling this culture and this new capability development. And there, perhaps, few traits which are going to be very critical for top leadership, in my thinking, based on last maybe 3 or 4 years. One is authentic leadership is going to be respected more. A few years back, every year Maruti, we have got 300-400 graduate engineers joining, MBAs joining. So one of my colleagues, production head, once told me that, Mr. Siddiqui, these people don't say even good morning to me when they meet me. So I said, this is a very simple situation now. The young generation will say good morning to you when you will earn that kind of professional respect and credibility from them. They will not be talking of hierarchical good morning to you anymore. It is actually going off. And something similar happened in one of the sessions I was invited to address the Indian Army. And I was quite surprised at what I have to do with Indian Army. But they said that we have got into a problem of culture where the young recruits who are coming in as second lieutenants, they have started refusing to salute the senior second or third or fourth time during the day. So I said, what exactly happened? It happened this way, that a youngster was there and he suddenly was meeting his senior 9:30 in the morning. So he gave a big salute to him. But 11 o'clock, that senior again met him. He was expecting another salute, but this guy said, अभी तो हमने 2 घंटे पहले आपको salute किया है. So culture army का था कि 4 बार मिले तो 4 salute, 10 बार मिले तो 10 salute. This youngster was saying, सुबेरे एक कर दिया काम हो गया, शाम को शायद बाय बाय कर देंगे जाते वक्त. But there was a conflict. So perhaps somewhere leadership role is going to be very critical when you talk of enabling this kind of a culture. Authentic leadership, Somewhere when we look at the second element post-COVID, compassionate leadership is becoming very critical, where you have empathy, where you can understand how others are feeling, what they are going through, and then you decide the kind of leadership role. Third is very difficult, that is the vision quotient. You must, as a leader, be able to envision the future before it becomes obvious to all others. Capability to look within, which everybody can do, capability to look around, some people can do, and capability to look beyond. Vision quotient of leadership. Maybe another one perhaps we are looking at is modesty, simplicity, role model, which I have learned from Japan very big way, very big way. Japanese leaders are very simple, very modest, no hang-ups, no kind of ego or arrogance. Big learning for Indian leaders there. And somewhere listening leadership, capability to listen with sensitivity is a great asset, part of being simple, modest. And last, maybe handling adversity. A leader now will be respected if he or she can handle crisis or adversity big way. When we look at this entire leadership perspective, in my thinking, one big learning is level 5 leaders are required now. Level 5 leaders are the ones who don't look at themselves. They look at building next line of leaders, and they look at building the future of the company, the next Maruti for next 20 years. And this learning came to me from one incident, actual incident, dealing with one of my first Japanese managing directors, Mr. Shinzo Nakanishi, 2008. And a tall guy, unlike Japanese being very short, tall guy, very smart, always smiling. And he became the first MD of Maruti after Mr. Jagdish Khattar retired 2007 December. So he was asking me that at Manesar, our new plant at that point of time, let us do a tree plantation exercise. And I was not getting time, but somehow, little later, we could decide one day, and we reached there in the morning. We reached a little early, so we were having a cup of tea. And I asked my civil plant operations people what kind of trees, 20,000 trees we are going to put today in this exercise. So they were saying ficus and many other horticulture names, and they also said mango trees. Then I asked them how many years this tree will take to reach to the fruit level. They said 6 years. Nakanishi was 63 at that point of time. Suzuki, we retired at 65. So I told him, Nakanishi-san, what all labor you are going to do today putting these 20,000 samplings, you will not get any fruit out of it, but I maybe enjoy those mangoes at Manesar. I was just joking over a cup of tea, but what he replied had great impact. I felt so embarrassed and small that day. He said, Siddiqui-san, one responsibility of the top management people like you and me is to create a healthy Maruti for tomorrow. Next top management who will come and replace us, they must get a very healthy Maruti. Building the institution for future. Doing something which is nothing to do with me. That day I realized leadership is not me, myself all the time. Leadership is building people. Leadership is building our company for the next kind of 10 years challenges, 20-year challenges. Somewhere a combination of this can help in creating this revitalizing impact on the org culture and maybe bringing capabilities which can handle BANI World. Thank you for this opportunity. Very privileged to be here.
Thank you, Siddiqui sir, for those insightful words on leadership. And that was truly a great speech. Now, welcoming Mr. Dutta.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's always an honor and a privilege to be participating in Top Rankers Summits, and especially over the last 24 years. And also pleasure to be sharing dice with my old friends, whom actually one has been into several forums over the last 40 years. So great pleasure to be sharing a platform and being here today. Well, the topic is very pertinent, very apt, because business is changing, environment is changing, everything is changing. So with all of those changes, how do we actually adapt? And what is it that organizations need to do to remain current, to not only thrive, but also even to sustain? And I have actually witnessed and been partly very closely observed organizations which probably made investment of 75,000 crores, doing a revenue of 30,000 crores, have actually vanished from the system altogether today. So this aspect, what Mr. Aquil Busrai was also mentioning, was about the BANI culture, the BANI environment. Well, BANI is something which was coined by one of the American anthropologists, but that was essentially like VUCA. It just actually talks about disruption in an environment. But if I look back over the last many decades, those disruptions, market is very brutal, and those disruptions continue to happen. The message for us and the challenges for us is, how do you create an environment or a culture where you are able to survive and sustain? And in these disruptions, organizations cannot always live by past laurels and past reputation, you continuously need to change. Well, culture is one of the, like any business strategy, well, lot many times people may kind of question that is culture the only way to really sustain and survive? Well, in business, you talk about business plans, strategies, marketing strategies, product development, product strategies, having all social media strategies. But the base of the pizza is essentially, and the platform on which the entire foundation and the organization becomes stronger is the culture. And hence, culture is one of the secret sauce that drives organization for higher performance, higher growth, and also for building capability in the organization. Now, the questions people would generally ask, but what is culture? And why do we need a culture? Performance is anyway happening. We are able to manage our business. Why do we need to focus on culture and invest time on inculcating a culture? And what is the right culture? And are cultures the same in every organization? Can culture, once we develop, can it fit into other organizations? Well, I think there are lots and lots of questions which may be crossing your mind, and so is crossing our mind as well. The intriguing part is the culture, what you see, may not be visible, but it is available, it's there everywhere. It's there in an organization, it's there when each of your team members are out in the marketplace. It is also true that it cannot be hidden. You have a large number of your leadership team members talking about great things in the company of how professional, how caring, how ethical, how great things, and how organizations is focusing on development of people. But people are very smart. They can see through. The truth actually comes out when it comes to on the ground of implementation and execution. And that's what Mr. Siddiqui was actually talking about, leadership. If you speak to and which I have done, talking to a large chunk of people, to check with them, what do they remember about their past organizations? Many people will have ambiguity in terms of what kind of a compensation levels somebody was getting, what kind of seniority level, what kind of a position was one handling at that point of time. But most people will actually remember how they were treated in that organization. So how employees get treated is something which relates to the culture of an organization. Well, culture is about shared values, attitudes, about behaviors, which actually define an organization's identity. It shapes the basic interactions of employees, customers, stakeholders, and it is ingrained in the purpose, mission, vision, values of an organization. And I have a couple of my colleagues, ex-colleagues from my earlier organizations who have actually witnessed and experienced this. In the early stages, maybe about 25 years back, we nurtured an organization called Escotel. Well, the identity has changed over time, it became Idea and now VI. Well, why it moved out into different brand name was essentially promoter's issue. But to bring to the aspect of the issue of culture, the organization at the top team, we got together to decide what kind of a purpose, mission, vision, and values that we should stand by. And there was a huge debate that happened for a couple of days. It was facilitated very robustly, and we came out with a booklet on mission, vision, values. And those were then very extensively communicated to people. Employees had a lot of conference calls, discussions among groups, small groups, to discuss and understand and validate each one of it, and how they will actually live by those values. We also made it a part of the induction of every employee. But the aspect where we remained committed was that every month, my managing director and myself traveled to the locations, whether it was Uttar Pradesh, Haryana, Kerala, every month, meeting up all the new joinees of the month and spending about 2 to 3 hours with all the new joinees, irrespective of levels, of actually sharing what those mission, vision, values means. Because those words may mean differently, values may differ and different understanding, but clarifying and standing in front of them and giving them explanation and explaining them what each of those values meant. Now, those clarity over time, those investment of actually creating an understanding of values was so ingrained that that company, though may not be one of the largest telecom company, was remained number one performing company in each of the circles, each of the locations that it was there. I remember much later, as a group president and CEO of Reliance, I tried my best for close to about 7 years to attract some of those talents from Idea Escotel to join my organization, but I'm actually sharing with you that it was not, we were not able to attract those talent. Why? There was so much of a trust, so much of a bonding, so much of the performance orientation and the culture of bonhomie in the organization that people enjoyed working. They were not being too much attracted by only compensation and titles, but the culture of the organization ingrained them in performing and retaining within the organization. So, culture is actually something which you may find so very different. Now, there are most organizations or large brands you see, they're all performing. But yet the culture is so very different. A Tata culture is so very different than a Reliance culture. A Xerox culture would be so very different than an Airtel culture. But then I think each of these companies are performing. How actually they have evolved over time is that they have evolved their own culture, because people come from different backgrounds, different cultures, they've assimilated them, and the top leadership has actually have ingrained and clearly envisaged what is the mission, vision, values of the organization, and what Siddiqui was actually talking about was leadership is the key issue, how all those systems and values got ingrained in the organization. Well, you may see that even for a similar kind of a business, even competitors may have different cultures. Their dress, style, decision-making process may also differ. Global companies and global setup will also need to respect the local culture, because adaptation to the local needs means you need to adapt to what works for that particular culture. And culture is something which is both top down and bottoms up. But then the responsibility of nurturing the appropriate culture for your organization rests with the leadership. Because if you look at a fish, the fish rots from the head. And hence, to create the right kind of a culture, it's the leadership which actually champions the entire process. How they lead from the front, how they lead by the examples, how they walk the talk, how also they reinforce, reward, and even reprimand the aspect of values that are getting inculcated in the organization. I'm reminded of one of the largest telecom company where I was the group director. One of the regions, southern regions, was a top performing region among the other four regions. contributing to over 30% of the revenue. And you found that this executive director, leader, was a great guy. Fantastic performance, year on year was doing exceptionally well. But then you found his management style, his behavior, his conduct, his treatment to people was so very abrasive and was not in line with the value systems and the culture of the organization. There was a employee communication meet that happened in one of the time, and this guy was very unprofessional in the way the whole meeting got conducted and the people got responded to their queries. And the questions, all of these feedback came to us as a leadership team. Later part after drinks and dinner, those people from Bangalore called up. Early morning, my MD and me, we discussed, we met, we talked about it. We took one day to do a test check and to really validate all those feedback that had come in. And the next very day, both of us met the chairman, we had a discussion, and the decision was just call him over to Delhi and let's have a discussion at the corporate office. We had a discussion and we confronted him, and immediately he was brought back to headquarters as a manager on special duty. And subsequently, there was a path for him to exit. What is the message here? Organizations need to stand up. You need to have courage. If you continue to accept unprofessional behavior, if you continue to accept behaviors or non-performance behaviors, then that is the culture that you are nurturing in the organization. Why this company today is #1 telecom brand, why this company is one of the greatest performing company, is because the top leadership team is aligned to their goals, their mission, vision, values, and they live by it. And they have the courage and conviction that even if something gets impacted close to 1,500 to 2,000 crores of revenue, one is willing to take that hit, but not to accept the unprofessional behavior in an organization. So that conviction and the courage is so very important for organizations to really live by. Similarly, it's about a culture of humanity and humility, and these are all great performing organizations. I happened to meet one of the chairmen of a large business enterprise in Mumbai, and I went for a meeting, and I reached on time, and I was sitting in the reception, and the chairman came in after 10 minutes. He came and introduced himself and apologized that he was caught up with the Mumbai traffic and was late by 15 minutes. And if I could give him another 5 minutes to organize, and then he'll meet. He came back again, came up to the reception, escorted me, the chairman of such a large, India's one of the largest enterprise company, escorting me to his office. And the next 90 minutes, even though I remember he received a lot of chits from his secretary, calls from ministries, from bureaucrats everywhere, he did not take a single call, spent that 90 minutes to discuss, deliberate, exchange thoughts. Wonderful discussion, one of the best meetings that I've had. And post that meeting, after that, he escorted me, thanked me for coming, and mentioned that he's going to respond within 2 days, and took me to the lift and thanked me for coming, and even checked whether I had transport to go back to the airport. A gentleman, that was the time when I was getting into the lift. I was doing exceptionally well. Great time that I was having in Xerox, having 7 promotions in 8 years. No idea to really even change the company. But that was the time that I took a call that if I get an offer from this organization, I'm actually going to join that. And I did. And I stayed there for about 6-7 years working with that company. So what is the message here? It's about top leadership. it's about the chairman, it's about the managing directors. His humanity and the humility actually demonstrated the kind of values. And when I was part of this corporation, I saw every bit of all that professionalism, values that was there with the chairman being seeped into the company in every aspect of communications, dialogue, interactions, walk the talk. So I think this is something which actually flows from the talk, and what Mr. Siddiqui was actually talking about, communication. Communication has to happen in very open, transparent kind of a manner. Organizations will also, many organizations that I see do employee attitude survey, employee engagement survey, best employer survey. Well, you do all those surveys and you get fat reports, you get a lot of analytics, a lot of data. What happens to those? Those are important to actually get certain insights, certain feedback. But where is the intent of organizations to use those inputs, those feedback into inculcating all of those to bring about changes in the organization, in the systems, policy, processes, and inculcating and investing on people and creating the right kind of a culture in the organization. Now, one of the organizations I remember is an organization like Xerox. And I'm very proud that I kind of worked for 8 years in that company, and I have a couple of my colleagues here. The chairman was, and the managing directors were very clear. They were very focused on quality as a culture. Leadership through quality was a 5 days program which was kind of created. And whether a peer to the chairman of the company, everybody went through the same program. And everybody needed to know system, policy, processes, adaptation to all of those as to how to deal with a customer. And the empathy and sensitivity towards customer. And that is something which got, and even now today, even after 30 years when you meet Xerox guys, the language that they speak, they talk, they exchange, you'll find there is some kind of a similarity. The orientation of understanding, discipline, timeliness, quality consciousness, customer sensitivity is ingrained into the blood systems of every Xerox employee. The kind of training investment we talked about, Mr. Busrai talked about capability building. I mean, that's an organization, a hallmark of an organization who invested so significant, such huge amount of money in actually training people with such a large workforce. And many a times, we had questions being asked that their attrition levels are still so very high. Well, high because these are high-performing, good quality people getting attracted for all the new ventures, new subsidiaries, new startups, and even low-performing organizations hiring these people to bring up their organizations. So the question was, why are we actually investing our money, wasting our money in actually training people? Well, one of the values and one of the ingrained thing about the company was the organization will invest on building talent, building and nurturing talent pipeline in the organization. And the similar questions to the chairman and the MD was they were very clear. We invest on people because that's the goals and the vision and the goal and the values that we have in the organization. As long as people are in the company, these capability building, these training are actually going to help in building and delivering better quality, better productivity and performance, A. B, if these people leave our company, they will remain ambassadors to our company. They will always be ambassadors to our company. And third, anyway, we are adding value to the national asset. That's the kind of pride you build in organizations. So friends, there are actually many such examples that you see of building such kind of an organization, of creating a robust organization and a culture an aspiration culture, a performing culture, which will led by top leaders who invest on innovation, creativity, positive customer and employee experience, and that's what helps in nurturing the right kind of a culture in a turbulent and a disturbing times of the marketplace, as you see every other day. We'll take some questions as we go along. Thank you so much. Thanks for the time.
Rajan bhai.
Thank you.
Yes, Dr. Gambhir.
I would like to thank Mr. Rajan Dutta for his insightful words. Now I would like to welcome Mr. K.S. Bakshi. Okay.
Thank you.
So, very good afternoon. Sabhi ko namaskar. I am one of the odd men out in this panel because I represent education sector, which is not considered corporate, although there is a huge private investment in this sector. Say, if you talk about the size of the education sector in India, we have 30 crore students in 16 lakh schools in India and 4 crore students in 50,000 colleges and 1,400 universities in India. So the total number of students in a school and higher education system, they are 34 crore, which is almost equivalent to the population of the third most populated country in the world, that is US. And when I say that I am not considered a corporate, because Article 29 of the Constitution of India says that education can't be offered as a business. So although 50% of the total professional and vocational education in India is given by the private sector, but it is not considered as a corporate. And another difference which we have, say university or higher education institutions are service organizations. So in most of the service organization, people stay there for a small time. Say if you are traveling in an aircraft, it is few hours. If you are in a bank, it is few minutes or few hours. If you are, in rail, in a train, it is again few hours or maybe one day. But my customer, that is a primary customer who receive my services, they stay with me for minimum 2 years, maximum 6 years in undergraduate degree, and some of the students stay with me for say 12 years, 15 years. In school, normally, a student stays in a school for about 10 years, 12 years. So, and moreover, the performance of an institution, an educational institution is judged by the performance of the customer, not my performance. Because, say, if I have, in higher education, if I have X number of students, my teacher are facilitated to make sure that the best comes out from those students, and whatever they do, what are their performances, what are their outcomes, what are their outputs, I am judged because of that, not because of what my teacher do in the class straight away. There are nowadays, say, accreditations, rankings, where say output and outcome of the teacher is also some of the factor, but end of the day, it is the students who perform. And the challenges which we have in our system, there are benefits, there are pros, there are cons. Like in school education, or if you talk about the school education, every year 2 to 2.5 crore students are sure to join, because we add one Australia every year. So every year 2.5 crore new students will join school education. 70% of them will move to the secondary education, and because of limited GER, GER is gross enrollment ratio, which means that higher education, students who are in the group of 18 to 24 years, they are considered to be the higher education age group. And right now we have only 30% GER available in India. That means only 30% students in the age group of 18 years to 20 years, they will find the opportunity to study in India. And if more people they want to come, we don't have the seats. And now government through national education policy is looking at enhancing that GER to 50 by 2030. That what the National Education Policy document says, and lately government has given statement that by the 2047 Amrit Kal Viksit Bharat, this number will go up to 65. So, say when I am judged by the performance of the students, and since I am assured, if I am doing well, if I am providing value for money, then students are there to take admission. So I don't have to run after the customer if I am a good quality-oriented organization. The challenges before education institutions are, the first and foremost is getting the right kind of teachers. So all of you know that technology is changing very fast, and it is changing at such a fast rate that the teacher today who has passed out from a university 10 years ago, he is almost blank in terms of the technologies which are being followed today. And when we admit a student, if there was a time, say when I did my graduation about 40 years ago, my curriculum was defined from semester 1 to semester 8, and in most of the institutions that curriculum was not changed for last 10 years, and it was not changed for next 10 years also. Today the situation has come, if I am not able to keep my curriculum agile, dynamic, I am not able to survive. I am not sure what technology will be there when the student is in final year, and what will be the expectation of the industry when the student passes out. We approached so many organizations that please share with us what skill you want in the students. Industry is, I will say, they shy away because they themselves are not very sure that when that student passes out, what technology will be there in that particular organization. So the cultural changes which we need to adopt in educational institutions, so they primarily is keeping the teacher updated with the new technologies, and also students, we need to teach our student not only to learn but unlearn and relearn. And I was talking to some of the industry veterans that in this stage of changing technology, what should we teach? And most of the people said, focus on fundamentals. Don't look at technology. You never know what technology will be there. Make students such strong that they are able to adapt that technology as and when they go through that kind of transformation. So I will stop here because of the time limitation. If opportunity comes, I will speak more on this topic. Thanks. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. BANI continues. Physically present, mentally not present. Great. Thank you, Mr. Sood, Top Rankers team, inviting us here for today's session. Nice to be amongst the friends, right? Colleagues, friends, and fellow panelists, and of course, distinguished participants, guests, sponsors, and others. I think a lot has been said in about last 1 hour or so. So probably I will not take full quota of 7 minutes that you allocated, but probably I'll finish it a little early, and obviously in the interest of the time. There's one thing that I picked up from Mr. Siddiqui's talk, right, and sir, when you said selectively delete the past. So what I did, like everyone, I also came prepared with my notes when I wrote in the morning, and I thought it's a very simple subject, right? Culture. You call HR guys and ask him or her to talk about culture. Obviously, you can continue for hours and hours together. And BANI, when I listened to Siddiqui Saab, I actually also deleted my notes immediately, right? And then I said, since a lot has been said, right, let me just share 2-3 other points, right? And, or maybe I'll try to summarize what has been shared by all of you before we move to the next question answer session, right? Now, actually, while we hear all this word of BANI, VUCA, people say polycrisis, actually, these are the things which happens daily in our life, right? I don't think so. This is something which is so overpowering that we need to really worry too much about it. These are nothing but changes happening around us, happening in ourselves, changes happening in the socio-political arena, or anything, economy or politics or anything. I think from the work point of view, and today's context is obviously whether it is corporate or whether it is academia, from the work point of view, we all are used to those changes. And there are few things, and since the topic is on revitalizing culture and building capabilities, there are few things which remains the same and they cannot change, come whatever may happen around us, right? People also, fellow panelists also spoke about that, right? What I just want to summarize it as a human-centric skills, right? That is something which is very important. Somebody said compassion, somebody said empathy, somebody said authentic leadership. I think whatever word or adjectives that we may use, if you are with, as a leader, if you are with your team, if you really care about him or her, if you really try to understand his or her problem, if you really, instead of waiting for him to say, good morning, sir, if you really say, hello, hi, how are you today? I mean, these are the small things which happens every day in the office or at our workplace, because of which culture continues to play an important role, all right? We as a leader, and I'm putting myself also in that place, or as a manager, we always think that I have done enough in my life, and there are 20, 50, 100, 500, 1,000 people under me. It's time for them to do that job, right? But I think until unless we become the role model, until unless we set the tone, right? I'll just give an example. In one of the leading hospitality company that I worked, we were there standing in the reception area, guest reception area, and the promoter of the company, he was sipping a coffee, and the coffee mug obviously fell down on his jacket on the floor. What do you think he would have done first? What was his first reaction? Clean the floor, right? Obviously, he did that without bothering for that the coffee has spilled onto his jacket. But because it's an hospitality industry, or it is the finest hotel chain, all right, this is the message that you want to give. Obviously, there were people, including housekeeping, others, people running down to the floor to help. But this gentleman, without waiting for anyone else to come, took out his handkerchief and started cleaning the floor, right? Now, very small example, but it's a very powerful example of what we as a leader, we need to behave at the, in our offices, at our shop floor, because that's what, when we say walk the talk, that's how you are setting the tone. That's how you are setting the culture in the organization, right? There are books, there are so many things on the net, we can continue to talk about it, but I think the way we leave that impression, the way we let our colleagues know, our people know that we are with you, the way we come across as a human being, our humility, right, that speaks volume. Rest of the things, there are many building blocks in the organization, whether you talk about learning, whether you talk about technology, each of those things plays very important role. But I think since most of those things are said, these are the 1 or 2 points I wanted to leave thought over here is that if we need to be authentic, if we need to be, come across as someone who, as a leader who's someone with the team, I think we have to really set those examples, continue to do it every day, right? It's not a one-time activity. And that's where I think the best of the organization, big organization, and there are, as I said, a lot of other things that are put in the place, but in the interest of the time, obviously, we can't talk about it. That was a couple of things that I just wanted to say. Since I deleted my notes, so I would not be taking much time. Thank you. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that wonderful panel discussion.
I'll take. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. So nice of you. Thank you. So, sir, 1:30 is the closure for this session, right? So we have 20 minutes to go. Let me start, Rajan, with you. To use a very common word, you glorified the chairman. In case you did too in some subtle way. Does this mean that the culture is set by the top leaders? Well, I would suggest one thing. Give a quick answer.
Yeah.
And then we'll interact.
Yeah. I think, as I mentioned, my immediate response was that culture is both top-down and bottoms-up. So every employee participates in creating the right culture. But the top leadership team, the chairman and the first-line team, sets the entire background, the entire boundaries, also defining the mission, vision, values of the organization. So it all starts from the top.
Does it not create a cult? It creates a cult.
But you may call it as a cult, but it's the culture that you want to nurture in that organization.
That's right.
That is what it works as an organization.
But Rajan, just to end of the culture will go away with the leader. Where is the sustainability?
The sustainability, as I mentioned, is not only, as I said, the entire top leadership team. It's not only the chairman, the first line team, and subsequently thereafter.
Yes. What's your view?
So, sir, you have to repeat the question.
When we hero worship the top leaders, are we not creating a cult? And why is that cult going to sustain in future, or it goes over with the leader itself?
Okay, so I really don't see a problem in that statement if it is creating a culture of cult. As long as it is performance-oriented culture, as long as it is not a kind of a dictatorship, as long as it is setting the right examples, right, the example that I gave just now. There are so many promoters, there are so many chief executives who have created that kind of an aura, and that aura still sustains in the organization even if they have faded away.
So it's very personalized.
Yeah, because if you are convinced that innovation is the key, I'm just using some buzzword again, if the innovation is the key, if performance is the key, right, or if the growth is the key, you have to drive it. People may take it as a cult, but as long as it is all in positive sense, it's okay.
So, Aquil, it's from personalized to institutionalized.
But where does institution happen? Siddiqui, you work with very powerful leaders. What's your view? Does the leader create a bigger than life image of himself or herself?
Yeah, I think I have worked with people who have that larger than life image, and worked with people, I said Japanese leaders who are down to earth, modest, very simple. But I think to a great extent when we are looking at future, we are looking at multi-generational dimension coming in, millennials coming in. I think we are looking at more distributed leadership. We are looking at more people who can be perhaps leading from the back. So that is the trend which I see. One, the earlier question, I think culture is the responsibility of the top leadership, but culture is to be participative, to involve everybody, as also Rajan said, bottoms up also. To a great extent there, Aquil bhai, perhaps when we are looking at broad leadership layer being role models, then I think sustenance and continuity.
As long as they are inspiring. And what you mentioned, Rajan bhai, was that they are inspirational. In the simple act of taking a hanky and wiping the floor, he's not cleaning the floor, he's setting an example. How does it happen in academic world? Do you hero worship?
Yeah, academic again say always junior colleagues. They consider senior leadership as the role model.
So hero worship, is it hero worship?
Not hero worshipping, but they expect that whatever senior leadership is doing, that is
always
appropriate
right.
and that we should also do. So to some extent,
You consider it as a healthy culture?
not say culture, I feel that it is part of the shared values. So it is not the responsibility of the top management, it is not the, say, accountability of the junior people, but it is a part of the shared value and everybody is equally participative in the culture. But senior leadership, definitely, they need to...
I agree with
yeah.
You're right, sir. I agree with that. The question comes around, Siddiqui bhai, how does one use technology to enhance the cultural change? What's your view?
Yeah, I think when you are looking at companies with large workforce, going across geographies or global, then I think technology will have to be used in a big way to communicate with people. And in our case, perhaps when we are communicating the quarterly board results, that becomes very easy now because of high tech. Perhaps when we are looking at, to a great extent, enhancing a kind of company connect with work from home, work from anywhere, I think technology becomes very, very critical. When you are looking at reward and recognition, I think technology is playing a very big role. The analytic
Data
part.
analytic part, yes.
And at the same time, I think HR forecasting model, 2010 I forecasted that 2018, 50% of our top leadership will superannuate. I think somewhere that forecasting and analytics decision making becomes very critical. But at the same time, there is one very small learning here, that when we are looking at using tech, it should not happen that I give this small email to Salil in the morning, Salil, good morning, Salil. Better it is I can go and have a little personal touch and say how you are doing, everything is fine. That is where this personal touch and high tech we need to balance a little bit.
And KS, do leaders...
If I may just add
Yes, sir.
one point that, since your question was how does the technology impacts the culture? I think what...
How can we leverage also?
Or do we leverage? So how do we leverage is what
And also
Siddiqui sir shared, right? I just want to focus on 2-3 points on the first part of the question. Look, what does the technology do? It helps you to be more efficient. It helps you to be more nimble and agile. It helps you to reach to your market or to your audience fast. It helps you to do a lot of things in less time, right? In a way, you're trying to tell your employees or your colleagues that this is what we really value. This is the kind of a resources or kind of a practices as a leader I'm setting in the organization. And now you need to really perform, right? We equip them and then we expect.
It's a facilitating.
Yeah. So obviously the technology has a major role to play.
Well, Rajan, let me ask you. I know of a chairman, a very famous chairman, whose immediate secretary, personal assistant, sent him a WhatsApp message that, sir, I'm not coming to work today. And he got offended. What's your view? WhatsApp message to me? How dare?
Well, I think every person, every employee is a human being, and everybody may have certain personal work or certain challenges that may come up for personal or for their family. And there are commitments that happen. Now the issue, is it the issue that why she has taken a leave, or is it the issue of why she has actually sent a WhatsApp message? Well, that was the faster medium of communication. You know, if one doesn't know that what were the other, was it better to really make a call and let him know? In the aspect of the critical chairman's office,
my question was about senior leadership, and we all discussed, are they changing with time, or are they still saying that, how dare you send me WhatsApp?
Well, I think most often, I think people are changing with time.
Yeah, I think people are changing and they accept it as a matter of fact.
Okay, let me ask the audience, what's your view? Anybody has a view on this? Raise your hand. Many people are working on WhatsApp right now, I can see, very busy with their own WhatsApp for last. Yes, ma'am.
It's changing. So it's changing. So we see because when we talk about our own MD, who happens to be our reporting boss.
Can somebody give us a mic? Yeah, ma'am, take this. What's your name?
Shalini.
Go ahead, go ahead.
So when we talk about the leadership, so we have one of a very professional person who's joined Manarachna right now. He's the MD of Manarachna. Everybody knows, I hope, Mr. Rajiv Kapoor. So we report directly to him. So when we talk about the culture of reporting via WhatsApp to him about coming, not coming, I think he's very casual on that specific approach, and that's been happening. So leadership team at all levels, be it corporate, be it educational, is changing, and that's the need of the hour. They need to change.
Rajiv belongs to a different set of leadership who has been brought up on the cultural change.
Okay.
What is normal?
Okay. So normal, when we talk about the ones who are already in educational institution, the ones who are already running the educational institutions, I think they're again very open to that. And are very centric to the human values. That again is very important. Thank you.
Any questions from the audience?
I have a question.
Oh, can I come back to you later? Yes, any questions? No? We'll close at 1:30. Whoever sent me the slip, rest assured, don't worry, we'll close at 1:30. Oh, you can go ahead with your question, ma'am.
So the question is, we've been directly dealing with corporates, so understanding how the corporate runs. The question is for the organizational culture, be it any educational, be it corporates. We all celebrate success, and that's a very intrinsic part of being humanized to the process plan. And, but my question is, how is failure addressed in the organization? Because it's part of the culture. Success, failure, both are very important for the growth of an organization or an employee in the organization. So how, as an organization, do you address failure for your employees?
Very good question. Especially it's very relevant now with fast decision making, quick decision, changes happening in the environment, and especially with startup culture. Everything doesn't succeed. The statistics show that out of X number of startups, only 0.001 become a unicorn. So everything is not hunky-dory as we see them. And those setbacks, I wouldn't call it failure, those setbacks are seen as part of stepping stone. So good organizations, good leaders, they cry over it. It's not that they are immune to not cry over mistakes and failures, but they don't dwell over it. The culture develops of tolerance and learning from failure, not to repeat the same failure again. That is the crux. What is your Rajan?
Yeah, I think many years back, Mr. Bhargav, chairman of Maruti, was telling me that for setting up the culture, as Rajan was saying, he met all the deputy general managers of Maruti at that point of time, maybe 50 people, in a communication meeting, and he asked that if in the last 6 months any one of you would have made a mistake which resulted into a failure, please raise your hand. So I said, Mr. Bhargav, nobody must have raised his hand in that first meeting. He says, no, not a single person raised his hand. But again, after 1 month when he had this meeting, again after 1 month, then few hands were up, and they said, that sir, we failed, we have an incident. So he says, please explain, and explain your learning so that balance 47 people should learn and don't commit that mistake.
But one has to be
We have
careful
to set that culture.
that talking about learning
Patience
from
for
failure, it doesn't mean condoning failure. One has to draw that fine line. One should not glorify it. It's nice to fail, but learn from failure.
If I may just give one specific example to Shalini's question. Your first part of the statement that celebration, success is celebrated is partially true and partially false. Not too many organizations also have a culture of really celebrating, right? But we always think from outside. Coming to what do we do with failure, one practice that we have in our organization, I have my colleague here, Shashi sitting over here, is when we meet, and obviously teams meet either daily, weekly or whatever that frequency is, but at least once in a month, we as a HR team, the only agenda point is to talk about with the team what is that did not go well in the past 30 days, right? whether it was a small, whether it was a big ticket item, we encourage people to talk about it. And then we clap for that. So that the person should not feel bad. Now, while again as a leader, the problem I have with the leaders is, we say all these good things, right? But when it comes to putting that practices on the shop floor, it does not happen. So that is.
Let me change gear and coming to you, Professor. The academic world and the industry seems to be sometimes not married on the same floor.
Yes.
And how do you bridge that gap?
Yeah. So before I answer that, I would like to add few words to what Shalini had said. Say, as head of the university, I tell my students that university is a controlled failure lab, and you are allowed to fail as many times as you like. Corporate may not extend this facility to you. Controlled failure lab. You fail as many times as you like, because you are going to learn from each failure. And make sure that you don't burn the lab. And say, coming to the gap between academia and industry or corporate, say, our policy formulation for education started with the constitution of Radhakrishnan Commission in 1948. So that was the first commission which laid down the roadmap and framework for higher education and school education in India. And prominently it was mentioned that there is a huge gap between academia and industry. After that, it was number of committees, Kothari committee in 60s, and then new education policy in 1986, program of action in 1992, and lately this national education policy, July 2020. Every report has said the gap is increasing. Every report has said the gap is increasing. But what we say, I have now, since being in industry for the last 40 years, now I have started making compromises to the extent, say, when I approach HR people, that you tell me what skill you want in your students. If I don't get the answer, what I tell my teachers, what I tell my deans and HODs, that why are you asking what skill they require? Why don't you look at their advertisement for recruitment of skilled personnel? Look at the skills which they are advertising. And
Yeah, I think it's a big topic, sir. I happen to have done my first PhD on industry-academia interface in the gap. But in respecting time, what I would ask each of you, what word of advice would you give to manage cultural revitalization and in less than 5 words, starting with you, Rajan?
Organization needs to continuously invest on setting up systems, policy, processes.
There's
quality,
11 words, I
customer
said less than 5 words.
Akhil, bhai, you have to be a little, that's a disruption. To really create that culture, and that helps in actually creating business and people excellence.
So, in short, what are the essence? What are the three
Creating
things?
systems, policy, processes,
Systems,
and
policies,
customer
and process.
sensitivity culture.
So it sustains.
Customer
Very good.
system.
Siddiqui bhai.
I'll only use three words. So communicate, collaborate, and coexist.
And?
Coexist.
Coexist. Excellent. Communicate, collaborate, and coexist. So, Professor.
So I will say, create and maintain culture by design, not by default.
By design means you create deliberately.
You
Consciously.
don't let it happen at its own.
Okay. Case?
I would say focus on human-centric skills and few critical competencies.
What about
Critical
business?
thinking,
What about business results?
That's an outcome.
Huh?
That's an outcome.
That's a good point. It's an outcome.
That's an outcome.
You build a culture by creating
You
human-centric
train, you
environment.
provide resources, you give them the right kind of a work environment, and then expect them.
Yeah. If I were to add my view, I would say listen and act and collaborate. I think time to listen. Leadership should come down from the high floors and to the grassroots level, listen and be sensitive and use the word empathy.
Human-centric skills include that.
Empathy, and not only for the name of it, but actually using the word to mean it, that my action will show empathy. So it's 1:29 now. So thank you very much for your time, and it's a privilege to lead a panel like this. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Now we would start our felicitation ceremony. For that, first of all, I would invite on stage Mr. Sood. Thank you, Mr. Sood. So first, we would like to felicitate Dr. Aquil Busrai, CEO of Aquil Busrai Consulting. Can we have a round of applause, please? Now we'd like to felicitate S.Y. Siddiqui, former Chief Mentor and Board Member at Maruti Suzuki India Limited. Kindly give him a big round of applause. Now I'd like to call forward Rajan Dutta, Founder and Managing Director of RFG Lifestyle Private Limited. Please welcome him with a round of applause. Now calling forward Shri K.S. Bakshi, Group Head of HR at InterGlobe Enterprises Private Limited. Please welcome him with a round of applause.